Fran was in the kitchen with Bob while the house stayed strangely peaceful around them. From the living room, they could hear Ian laughing. It was not the fake laugh he used when he was trying to make everyone think he was fine. It was real, soft at first, then bigger, like something inside him had finally let go. Fran looked toward the doorway and shook her head with a small smile. "I never saw Ian this happy when we were kids," Fran said. "But to be real, he never had a real childhood, not like me and my sisters." Bob leaned against the counter listening. He had noticed it too. Ian was different here. Around Ray, around Rod, around the people who did not judge him, Ian seemed lighter. He did not look like he was waiting for someone to yell, shame him, or tell him he was wrong for needing comfort. Bob sighed softly. "Maybe that's why he's part of the ABDL community," Bob said. "Maybe it gives him back something he never got to have." Fran nodded slowly. She did not fully understand everything about Ian's world, but she understood pain. She understood what it looked like when someone spent their whole life surviving instead of living. Before she could answer, Rod walked into the kitchen. He looked tired, but his face was calm. "Bob," Rod said, "get a diaper for me." Bob blinked for a second, then nodded. "For Ian?" Bob asked. Rod looked toward the living room. "Yeah," Rod said, "he's too calm right now to be pulled out of it by a mess. Let's take care of him before it becomes a problem." Fran looked down for a second, taking in how normal Rod made it sound. There was no shame in his voice, no disgust, no joke, just care. Bob went to the cabinet where Ray kept Ian's supplies. Fran watched as he grabbed a clean diaper, wipes, powder, and the little bag Ray always used. Rod noticed Fran watching. "What?" Rod asked gently. Fran shook her head. "Nothing," she said. "It's just, when Ian needed anything growing up, Mom and Dad acted like it was a burden. Here, you guys just help him." Rod's face softened. "That boy spent too many years being made to feel like love had rules," Rod said. "In this house, care is care." Bob came back with the supplies and handed them to Rod. From the living room, Ian called out, "Is someone talking about me?" Fran smiled. "Maybe," she called back. Ian groaned, "Oh man." Rod walked toward the living room with Bob behind him. Fran followed slowly, still trying to understand how the same Ian who used to flinch at kindness could now laugh openly in a house full of people who wanted him safe. When they entered the living room, Ian was sitting with his stuffed bear tucked against his chest. Ray was beside him on the couch, smiling like this version of Ian was something precious. Ray looked at Ian and gave him the calm look that always meant the decision was already made. "Ian, you know what to do," Ray said. "Hold your bear and lay down. You'll be in your chair all day since we're going out, so you're going to be doubled and locked." Ian hugged his bear tighter and whined, "Daddy Ray." Ray shook his head. "I don't want to hear it," Ray said. "This isn't a punishment. This is so you stay comfortable and safe while we're out. You know how long days in the chair go." Ian looked away, still pouting. Bob stood by the doorway with the supplies in his hands, trying not to look awkward. Fran was quiet behind him. She was still learning how Ian's life worked here, but one thing was clear: Ray was not being cruel. He was firm, but he was caring. Ian sighed hard and slowly laid back, holding his bear against his chest. "Good," Ray said softer now, "thank you." Ian mumbled, "I hate when you use the calm voice." Rod chuckled from the hallway, "That means you already lost." Ian pointed his bear toward Rod. "No one asked you." Fran smiled a little. For the first time, the scene did not feel strange to her. It felt like a routine. A different kind of routine than what she grew up with, but still a routine built on trust. Ray worked quickly and respectfully, keeping Ian covered as much as possible. Bob handed him what he needed without making jokes. Rod stood nearby, not hovering, just ready to help if needed. Ian stared at the ceiling, still pouting. Ray noticed and said, "You can pout all you want. We're still going out and you're still going to have fun." Ian huffed, "You're so mean." Ray leaned closer and tapped Ian's bear gently. "No," Ray said, "I'm responsible." Ian stayed quiet for a second, then whispered, "Same thing." Fran laughed before she could stop herself. Ian turned his head. "Fran, don't join them." "I'm not," Fran said. "I just never knew you were this dramatic." Ian's mouth dropped open. "Dramatic," he said, "I am being oppressed." Bob shook his head. "By a diaper change." Ian pointed at him next. You're on thin ice too. Ray finished getting Ian ready and helped him sit back up slowly. There, Ray said, all set. Ian adjusted his bear in his lap and looked down, embarrassed but calmer. Ray crouched in front of him. Look at me, Ray said. Ian looked at him. You're okay, Ray said. We take care of you because we love you, not because you're a problem. Ian swallowed hard, his pout faded a little. I know, Ian said quietly. Ray smiled. Good, now get in your chair, we have a whole day out and I am not letting you hide in this house. Ian groaned as Bob brought his power chair closer. Fran watched as Ray and Rod helped Ian transfer safely. Once Ian was settled, he hugged his bear and looked around at everyone. So Ian said, where are we going? Rod smiled, out. Ian narrowed his eyes. That is not an answer. Ray grabbed the bag and looked back at him. It is the only answer you're getting right now. Ian sighed dramatically. Ray then looked at the chair and said, Ian, your harness. Ian hugged his bear tighter and looked away. Daddy. Ray crossed his arms, not angry, just firm. Harness, Ray said, or I will get you a babysitter and you can stay home. Ian's eyes got wide. What? No, Ian said quickly, put it on. Ray nodded, good boy. Ian pouted, but he leaned forward a little so Ray could reach behind him. Ray moved carefully, making sure the straps were not twisted and that nothing pulled too tight. Fran watched from the side, quiet. She could tell Ian hated being reminded that he needed help, but she could also tell Ray knew exactly how to handle him. Ray did not baby him to embarrass him. He kept him safe because he loved him. Ian mumbled, I don't need a babysitter. Ray clipped the harness and checked it. Then don't fight me on the things you need. Ian looked down at his bear. I just don't want to feel like a little kid in front of everybody. Rod walked over and checked the side of the chair. Ian, Rod said gently, the harness is for safety. You are going to be in this chair all day. Nobody here thinks less of you. Bob nodded. Yeah, man, we just want you to enjoy the day without sliding forward or getting hurt. Ian stayed quiet. Ray crouched in front of him and softened his voice. Look at me. Ian slowly looked up. You are not a problem, Ray said. You are not a burden, but when we go out, we do this right. Diaper, bag, harness, chair, check, everything. That's how we make sure the day goes good. Ian swallowed and nodded. Okay, he said softly. Fran stepped closer. Ian, she said, when we were kids, nobody checked if you were okay. Maybe this feels weird because now people actually are. Ian looked at her and his face changed. The pout faded into something more real. Yeah, Ian whispered, maybe. Ray squeezed Ian's shoulder. There we go, Ray said, now you're ready. Ian sighed dramatically, I hate being ready. Rod laughed, you hate everything until we actually leave the house. Ian pointed at him, that is not true. Bob grabbed the supply bag, it is a little true. Ian looked at Fran, are you hearing this? They are bullying me. Fran smiled and fixed the bear in Ian's lap. No, she said, they're loving you. Ian got quiet for a second. Then he looked down at the bear and whispered, yeah, I know. Ray stood up and opened the front door. Come on, Ray said, family day starts now. Ian rolled his eyes, but as Bob helped guide the chair toward the door, he smiled. Bob waited until Ian was busy by the front door with Fran fixing the bag on the back of his power chair. Then Bob stepped closer to Ray and lowered his voice. Ray, Bob said quietly, can I ask you something? Ray looked over at Ian first, making sure he could not hear them. Fran was talking to Ian about where they were going and Ian was pretending not to care while clearly being excited. Ray turned back to Bob, what? Bob kept his voice low. Why the power chair? I thought the point of the push chair was to have him lose weight. Ray's face tightened a little. His arms can't push like that, Ray said, not for a whole day out, you know that. Bob nodded fast, I know, I do know that, and I love him, you know I do too. Ray crossed his arms, then what are you saying? Bob sighed and looked down the hall again. I'm saying sometimes you say no to him, Bob said, and then the next minute you give in. I know Ian needs support, but sometimes I don't know if you're helping him or letting him hide. Ray's jaw moved like he wanted to answer hard, but he held it back. Don't start, Ray said, we need to go. Bob did not move. I know, Bob said, but this isn't over. Ray stared at him for a second, then looked back at Ian. Ian was laughing now because Fran had put his bear's paw under the harness strap like the bear was buckled in two. Ray's face softened despite himself. "You think I don't worry about that?" Ray asked quietly. "You think I don't lay awake wondering when I'm protecting him and when I'm holding him back?" Bob's expression changed. "I didn't say that." "No, but that's what it feels like," Ray said. "Ian has spent his whole life being told his needs were too much. So yeah, sometimes I give in. Sometimes I let him have the power chair because I would rather get him out into the world than watch him stay home because his body gives up halfway through the parking lot." Bob looked over at Ian again. Ray continued, quieter now. "The doctor said the chair is to support him while he works on his weight, not punish him for having a body that hurts. He can work on losing weight without making every trip outside feel like a test." Bob rubbed his face. "I get that," Bob said. "I just don't want him to lose what independence he still has." Ray nodded slowly. "Neither do I," he said, "but independence doesn't always mean doing everything the hardest way. Sometimes it means having the right support so you can actually show up." Bob was quiet. From the front door, Ian called, "Are you two whispering about me?" Ray turned his head. "No." Ian narrowed his eyes. "That was too fast, you are." Fran smiled. "They're probably talking about how dramatic you are." Ian gasped. "Fran, I trusted you." Ray gave Bob one last look. "We'll talk later," Ray said. Bob nodded. "Yeah, later." Ray walked back over to Ian and checked the chair one more time. He made sure the harness was flat, the diaper bag was clipped on, and Ian's bear was secure in his lap. Ian watched him closely. "What?" Ray asked. Ian shrugged. "You got your serious face." Ray softened his voice. "I'm fine." Ian looked past him at Bob. "Bob." Bob forced a small smile. "I'm good, buddy." Ian did not fully believe him, but he let it go. Rod opened the door and said, "Can we please leave before Ian finds another reason to delay us?" Ian rolled his eyes. "I am the only fun person in this house." Ray grabbed the door and pointed outside. "Then prove it," Ray said. "Let's go." Ian smiled a little and drove his power chair forward. Fran walked beside him, Bob followed behind, and Ray stayed close enough to help but far enough to let Ian lead. But as they went outside, Bob's words stayed with Ray. This was not over. And deep down, Ray knew Bob was not completely wrong. After they had been out for a while, Fran looked over from beside Ian's power chair and rubbed her stomach. "I'm hungry," Fran said. Ray nodded. "Same, how about burgers?" Ian's face lit up. Ray looked at him and added, "And Ian, a salad." Ian opened his mouth ready to complain, but then he paused. He looked down at his bear, then back at Ray. "Sounds good," Ian said. Ray blinked a little, surprised. "Really?" Ian shrugged. "Yeah, I can do a salad, maybe grilled chicken on it." Fran smiled. "That actually sounds good." Ray looked relieved. "Good, see, that wasn't hard." Then Ray turned toward Bob. "Bob," Ray asked. Bob was standing a few feet away, arms crossed, staring off like he was still stuck in the conversation from earlier. Bob shook his head. "Ray, I'm not hungry." The mood shifted right away. Ian looked between them. "Okay, what did I miss?" Ray forced a calm voice. "Nothing." Ian narrowed his eyes. "That means something." Fran looked at Bob, then Ray. She could feel the tension. Bob was not mad in a loud way, but he was worried, and that worry was sitting heavy on his face. Ray sighed. "Bob, eat something." Bob shook his head again. "I said I'm not hungry." Ian's smile faded. "Is this about me?" Nobody answered fast enough. Ian looked down at his lap. "It is." Fran stepped closer to him. "Ian." "No," Ian said quietly, "it's fine. People always talk about me like I'm not there." Ray's face softened. "Ian, that's not what happened." Ian looked at Bob. "Then what happened?" Bob let out a breath and rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm worried about you," Bob said, "that's all." Ian laughed once, but it was not happy. "That's never all." Ray stepped forward. "Bob, not here." Bob looked at him. "Then when? Because every time I bring it up, you shut it down." Ian's hands tightened around his bear. Fran looked at Ray. "Maybe you should just say it. He already knows something is wrong." Ray looked frustrated, but he knew she was right. Bob crouched a little so he was closer to Ian's eye level. "Ian, I love you," Bob said. "You know that, right?" Ian nodded slowly. "Yeah. I'm not trying to take anything from you, Bob said. I'm not judging the chair or the diapers or Ray helping you. I just worry that sometimes everybody is so scared of hurting you that they stop pushing you. Ian went quiet. Ray crossed his arms. That's not fair. Bob looked up at him. Maybe not, but it's what I see sometimes. Ian swallowed. So you think I'm lazy? Ian asked. Bob's face changed fast. No, no, Ian, that is not what I said. But that's what it sounds like, Ian said. Power chair, salad, weight, support. Everyone keeps saying support, but it feels like everyone is just waiting for me to mess up. Ray crouched beside him and put a hand on the chair arm. I'm not waiting for you to mess up, Ray said. I'm trying to help you have a good day. Ian looked at him. Then why does it feel like everybody has a meeting about me? Fran's face softened. Because we're all learning, Fran said, and maybe we're messing it up. That made Ian look at her. Fran continued, I didn't understand any of this when I got here. I still don't understand all of it. But I know this, you're happier, you're safer, and you're also scared people are going to decide your happiness is too much. Ian's eyes watered a little, but he looked away before anyone could point it out. Bob nodded slowly, that's not what I want. Ray looked at Bob, then eat with us. Don't stand there acting like you're outside the family because we disagree. Bob sighed. I'm not trying to be outside the family, Bob said. I just don't want to pretend everything is simple. Ian hugged his bear tighter. It's not simple, Ian said, but I said yes to the salad, did I? Ray smiled a little, you did. Ian looked at Bob, and I'll try, but don't talk like I'm not trying just because I still need help. Bob looked ashamed. You're right, Bob said, I'm sorry. Ian nodded once, okay. Rod clapped his hands softly from behind them. Good, family drama paused, food now. Fran laughed under her breath. Ray stood and looked at Bob again, burger. Bob hesitated then sighed. Fine, Bob said, burger. Ian smirked, look at that, I'm not the only dramatic one. Bob pointed at him, don't push it. They sat down together. Ian had his salad with grilled chicken, Ray and Fran had burgers, Rod had his food, and Bob sat with his burger even though his mind still looked heavy. Bob rolled his eyes, but he still took a bite of his burger. Rod noticed right away. What? Rod asked. Bob chewed slowly and shook his head. Nothing, Bob said. Rod leaned back in his seat. That didn't look like nothing. Bob set the burger down and wiped his hands. It's nothing, Bob said again, but his voice was tight. Ian looked up from his salad. See, I knew it, something is going on. Ray gave Bob a warning look. Bob. Bob looked at Ray, then at Ian. He sighed. I'm not trying to ruin lunch, Bob said. I just don't like acting fake. Fran looked between them. Then don't act fake, just say what you mean without making Ian feel attacked. Ian held his fork and frowned. Too late for that. Ray softened. Ian. No, Ian said, I'm eating the salad, I'm in the chair, I'm wearing the harness. I did everything right and Bob still looks like I did something wrong. Bob's face dropped. Ian, no, Bob said, that's not it. Then what is it? Ian asked. Bob looked down at his burger. I'm scared. That made everyone quiet. Rod's expression changed. Scared of what? Bob looked at Ian. Scared that we love you so much that we don't know when to push you and when to protect you, Bob said. And scared that if we get it wrong, you're the one who pays for it. Ian's grip on his fork loosened. Ray sat back, his jaw tight, but he did not interrupt. Bob continued, I know the power chair helps. I know your arms can't handle a whole day in a pushchair. I know Ray isn't just giving in. But sometimes I see you hiding behind jokes and routines and I worry you're not telling us when you're scared too. Ian looked down at his bear sitting in his lap. Fran gently touched Ian's shoulder. Are you scared? Ian did not answer right away. Then he nodded. Yeah, Ian said quietly, all the time. Ray's face softened. Ian swallowed hard. I'm scared if I lose weight, people will expect me to stop needing help. I'm scared if I don't lose weight, people will think I'm not trying. I'm scared if I use the power chair, I'm lazy. I'm scared if I don't use it, I'll hurt myself and ruin the whole day. Nobody moved. Ian wiped at his face fast, like he was angry at the tears. And I'm scared that if I'm too much work, one day Ray's going to get tired of me. Ray immediately leaned forward. That will never happen, Ray said. Ian looked at him, you don't know that. Ray's voice got firmer, yes I do. Bob looked ashamed, Ian I'm sorry I didn't mean to put that fear in your head. Ian shook his head, you didn't, it was already there. Rod sighed and looked at Bob, that's why you don't roll your eyes and say nothing. Around Ian silence gets loud. Bob nodded slowly, yeah I see that now. Fran looked at Ian's plate. You're doing good, she said, you picked grilled chicken salad without fighting, that counts. Ian sniffed and gave a tiny smile, it has ranch on it, don't make me sound like a hero. Ray chuckled softly, still counts. Bob picked up his burger again. I'm going to eat, Bob said, and I'm going to stop acting like my worry is more important than your effort. Ian looked at him for a second. Good, Ian said, because your burger was getting cold and that's a crime. Rod laughed, there he is. Ray reached over and fixed Ian's bear so it would not slide under the tray. Ian looked at Ray, you're not tired of me. Ray shook his head, not even close. Ian whispered, even when I'm dramatic. Ray smiled, especially then. Bob took another bite of his burger, this time without rolling his eyes. Rod pointed at him, see, was that so hard? Bob swallowed and sighed, don't start. Ian smirked, oh this isn't over. Fran laughed, now he sounds like Bob. For the first time since they sat down, the table felt normal again, not perfect but honest. And for Ian, honest was better than everyone pretending nothing hurt. Bob looked down at his burger, then back at Ian. I know your parents judge you, Ian, Bob said quietly. I wasn't trying to judge you, but I was, and that's my fault. I'm a worrier, especially with people I care about. Ian stayed quiet for a moment, his fork resting in his salad. Ray looked at Bob, still guarded, but he did not interrupt. Bob sighed. When I see Ray helping you, part of me gets scared, not because I think it's wrong, not because I don't love you, I just start worrying about what happens next. Your health, your weight, your chair, your confidence. I worry so much that I forget you're sitting right here trying. Ian swallowed hard and looked down at his bear. So you're not mad at me? Ian asked. Bob shook his head. No, I'm mad at myself for making you feel like I was. Fran leaned back in her seat. That was actually a good apology. Bob gave her a tired look. Thanks, Fran. Ian gave a small smile, but his eyes were still wet. I know him a lot, Ian said. Ray immediately shook his head. No. Ian looked at him. Ray. No, Ray said firmer, you have needs, that doesn't make you a lot. Bob nodded. Ray's right, and I need to learn how to worry without making you feel like a problem. Rod took a sip of his drink and said, that's called thinking before talking. Bob looked at him, you're enjoying this too much. Rod shrugged, a little. Ian let out a small laugh, and the tension at the table finally loosened. Ray reached over and gently fixed Ian's napkin. You okay? Ian nodded. Yeah, I just hate when people care about me and I don't know how to handle it. Fran smiled softly. That's because you're used to care coming with strings. Ian looked at her. Fran continued, Mom and Dad made love feel like a test. Here, it's not a test, you can need help and still be loved. Ian looked down again, quiet. Bob picked up his burger. I'm sorry, Ian, he said again, for real. Ian nodded, okay, I forgive you. Bob smiled a little, thank you. Ian pointed his fork at him, but if you roll your eyes again, I'm telling Ray you need a babysitter. Ray laughed, I'll find one. Bob looked between them, wow, betrayed by everyone. Rod smiled, welcome to the family. Fran laughed and Ian finally took another bite of his salad. Ray watched him with a soft look on his face. Ian noticed and said, what? Ray shook his head, nothing, I'm proud of you. Ian tried to hide his smile, for eating lettuce. For staying at the table, Ray said, for talking instead of shutting down. Ian looked at Bob, then Fran, then Rod. Yeah, Ian said quietly, I'm trying. Bob nodded, I see that now. And this time Ian believed him. Ian looked at Bob from across the table, his fork still in his hand. Bob, Ian said quietly, Fran and I have messed up parents, they wanted their 5 kids to help them before they ever helped us. Fran's face dropped a little, but she nodded because Ian was right. Ian swallowed and looked down at his bear. Even though I've only known you for 2 months, Ian said, I trust you more than I trust our parents. Bob froze. Ray looked at Ian, surprised by how honest his voice sounded. Ian kept going before he lost the courage. Our parents made everything about them, Ian said. If we were hurt, they were tired. If we needed help, they were embarrassed. If I was happy in a way they didn't understand, they made it sound like I was broken. Fran reached over and gently touched Ian's arm. Ian looked at Bob again. So when you worry about me, I don't always hear worry, Ian said. Sometimes I hear Mom and Dad, I hear them saying I'm too much, I hear them saying I'm wrong. Bob's eyes softened. Bob said, I am so sorry. Ian shook his head. I know you're not them, Ian said. That's why I'm telling you, because I don't want to shut you out. I don't want to lose someone else just because my head turns care into judgment. Bob set his burger down and leaned forward. You're not going to lose me, Bob said. And I need to earn that trust better, not just say I care but show it in a way that doesn't make you feel small. Ray looked at Bob, the anger finally leaving his face. Fran wiped at her eyes and laughed a little. I hate that he's right, Fran said. We really did have parents who wanted children to raise them. Rod sat back inside. That's a hard thing to grow up under, Rod said. Kids are supposed to be loved first, not used first. Ian nodded, but his face was tight. Ray reached over and gently put his hand on Ian's shoulder. You are loved first here, Ray said. Ian looked at him. No earning it, Ian asked. Ray shook his head. No earning it. No passing a test. No test. Ian looked at Bob. Bob nodded. No test for me either. Ian breathed out slowly, like he had been holding that breath for years. Okay, Ian whispered. Bob gave him a small smile. And for the record, Bob said, trusting me after 2 months means a lot. I'm not going to treat that like it's nothing. Ian smirked weakly. Good, because I don't trust easy. Fran laughed softly. No, you do not. Ray picked up Ian's fork and handed it back to him. Now eat your salad, Ray said gently. Ian took the fork and rolled his eyes. There he is. Ray smiled. What? The loving dictator. Rod laughed. That sounds about right. Bob finally took another bite of his burger. Ian pointed at him. No, I roll that time, growth. Bob swallowed and nodded. I'm learning. Fran leaned back in her seat, watching Ian, Bob, Ray, and Rod together. For the first time in a long time, it did not feel like Ian and Fran were surviving their family. It felt like they were finding a new one. After lunch, Ray leaned closer to Ian and paused. Champ, Ray said softly, it smells like you need a change before we go home. Ian's face went red right away. He looked down at his bear and mumbled, sorry. Ray shook his head. You have diapers for a reason, Ray said. Now let's go. Ian still looked embarrassed as Ray grabbed the diaper bag from the back of the chair. Fran noticed Ian's face and stepped beside him. Ian, it's okay, Fran said quietly. Ian gave a small shrug. It doesn't feel okay. Bob stood up from the table, still holding the last bite of his burger. Do you want me to wait here with Fran? Ray looked at Ian. Your call, champ. Ian looked at Bob, then Fran. Fran can stay here, Ian said. Bob can come if he wants. Bob nodded. I'll come. Ray guided Ian's chair toward the family restroom. Rod stayed back with Fran and cleaned up the table. As they moved away, Ian kept his eyes down. Bob walked beside him and said, Hey, I'm not judging you. Ian let out a weak laugh. You picked a bad day to say that. Bob sighed. Fair. Ray opened the restroom door and checked that it was clean. Then he helped Ian inside and locked the door behind them. Ray's voice stayed calm. Okay, buddy, same as always, hold your bear, we'll get you cleaned up and then go home. Ian hugged the bear tight. I hate this part, Ian whispered. I know, Ray said, but needing help doesn't make you less grown, it just means your body needs help. Bob stood near the sink, ready to hand Ray wipes and supplies, but he kept his eyes respectful. Ian looked at him. Still not too much, Ian asked. Bob's face softened. Still not too much, Bob said, not even close. Ray smiled a little and got everything ready. A few minutes later, Ian was clean, comfortable, and back in his chair. Ray fixed the harness and made sure Ian's bear was tucked safely in his lap. There, Ray said, all set. Ian looked tired now, not just embarrassed. Ray crouched in front of him. Look at me. Ian looked at him. You did nothing wrong, Ray said. We had lunch, you had a good day, now we're going home, that's it. Ian nodded slowly. Okay. Bob opened the door and they headed back out. Fran stood when she saw them. "You okay?" she asked. Ian nodded, then gave her a tiny smile. "Yeah, just ready to go home." Rod grabbed the trash and said, "Then home it is." Ray took his place beside Ian's chair. Ian looked up at Bob. "Thanks for coming," Ian said quietly. Bob nodded, "Always." Ian hugged his bear tighter as they headed for the exit. The day had not been perfect. There had been awkward moments, hard talks, and embarrassment. But Ian had not been laughed at. He had not been shamed. He had been cared for. And for Ian, that made all the difference. Fran stayed back with Bob while Ray, Rod, and Ian started cleaning up the table. She kept her voice low. "Bob," Fran asked, "did you mean what you said to Ian?" Bob paused with the trash in his hand. He looked over at Ian, who was laughing quietly at something Ray said while holding his bear in his lap. Bob sighed. "At first, this ABDL thing was weird for me," Bob said honestly. "I didn't understand it. I saw the diapers, the bear, the way Ray talks to him sometimes, and I didn't know what to think." Fran nodded slowly. "Yeah, I get that." Bob looked down, then back at Ian. "But after seeing what your parents did to him," Bob said, "after seeing what happened at the cabin, I started to get it." Fran's face softened. Bob continued, "Ian isn't doing this because he wants to be broken. He's doing it because somewhere in this he feels safe. He gets care without being yelled at. He gets comfort without someone making him pay for it." Fran swallowed hard. "That's what Mom and Dad never gave him," she said. Bob nodded. "Exactly, and today I messed up because I let my worry sound like judgment. That's what your parents did. They acted like every need was a problem." Fran looked toward Ian again. "He trusts you," she said. "That's big for him." "I know," Bob said quietly. "That's why I feel like crap." Fran gave him a small, sad smile. "Then don't waste it," she said. "Just do better." Bob nodded. "I wills." Across the table, Ian looked over at them. "What are you two whispering about?" Ian asked. Fran smiled. "You." Ian groaned. "Of course, I am the main character." Ray laughed and handed him his bear after fixing the chair bag. "You are definitely dramatic enough," Ray said. Ian looked at Bob. "Everything okay?" Bob walked over and crouched a little beside Ian's chair. "Yeah," Bob said, "everything's okay." "And Ian?" Ian tilted his head. "What?" Bob's voice turned serious. "I meant what I said," Bob told him. "I care about you. I'm still learning, but I'm not going anywhere." Ian's face changed. The joke he was about to make disappeared. "Okay," Ian said softly. Ray watched them quiet for a moment. Rod picked up the last tray and said, "Good. Now can we go home before this turns into another family meeting?" Ian pointed at Rod. "You love family meetings." Rod shook his head. "I love peace." Ian smiled a little. "Wrong family then." Fran laughed and Bob finally smiled too. As they headed out, Fran walked beside Ian's chair while Bob held the door open. Ray stayed close, one hand near the back of the chair like always, not controlling Ian, just ready. Ian looked up at Bob as they passed. "Thanks," Ian said. Bob nodded. "Anytime." Ian hugged his bear tighter, but this time he did not look ashamed. For once, the people around him were not trying to change him into someone easier to love. They were learning how to love the person he already was.